Hello, good morning, and welcome to Christ Oasis Ministries, where we believe that times of refreshing always comes from the presence of the Lord. It's a great time to be with you again from Chicago. It's a beautiful, beautiful morning, and we're excited after getting all that snow for about 2 weeks with freezing temperatures. And I'm happy to be here again with the men from Christ Oasis Ministries, always coming to you with exciting discussions and exciting interviews. We had a great one last month about contentment. And we're happy to do it twice because the feedback we got was so good. We still had outpouring of questions coming out. So we decided to do part 2 of it. Because you know what they say if it's good, you do it 2 times. So we're here to do the second part of contentment. Hallelujah. And then I'll just start with these amazing men of God. I have them introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right into the discussions for the day.
I'm Pastor Samuel Amwa from the West Campus, Christ Oasis Ministries. I'm the associate pastor.
Anthony Amponson, Christ Oasis Ministries, Chicago campus. I am part of the media ministry.
It's Pastor Andy Mbui from the Zion campus, the closest place to God you can get, but that's not the subject for discussion today. I'm amongst the servant leaders in our North Campus family.
Yes, Kana Yo K. Odeloga, apostle and resident pastor of the Christ Oasis Tabernacle in Dalton.
Great. Now that we've had all of you introduce yourselves, we're just going to go into it. Godliness with contentment, the Bible says, is great gain. Not just any gain, it's actually great gain. But we had a question for the first one we did, and this one was somebody trying to ask this. He said, if godliness is with contentment is great gain, then why did God tell us to multiply? Why did God tell us to increase? Why did God tell us to add more? And when you look at the parable of the talents, God was actually mad at the one who was content with that one talent and decided to hide it. So to all of us, should we go with the master and always go for more, or do we have to just settle for what we have?
I'll kick it off.
Okay.
I think that in this case we're talking about really the heart at which one is pursuing whatever resources or agenda or purpose or whatever in life. I think that heart towards that accomplishment or whatever that gain that you're trying to get, is really where the distinction comes, right? I don't think contentment necessarily means that, you shouldn't have more, that there shouldn't be a desire for you to want more in life, even if you have more, right, already in life. But I think it's more about if you have it in your heart that getting more is what makes you who you are, or that is what is pleasing to God, or that is, then I think your heart is starting to stray, where you're now becoming more materialistic, right? So I think that's where the distinction starts to kind of lie, where we need to be able to, it's good for you to have goals and things that you want to achieve, regardless of what level that you reach, right? But at the same time, you need to recognize that it's not those things and those goals that makes you who you are necessarily.
Wow. That's a great way to put it. Anybody has any add-ons to that?
I believe that contentment is not about what you have or what you achieve. I believe that contentment is about who you are and who you have chosen to believe. Bible makes us to understand that our conversation should be without covetousness. The Bible makes it that we should be content with whatever things we have, but we are reminded that a man's life does not consist of the abundance of things that he or she has. So come to the point of contentment. Contentment can be in spite or despite of what you have or what you don't have or your situations. Contentment is actually a state of mind. It's a state of being. It's to we who are Christians, your level of, when Bible talks about contentment and godliness coming together, I believe that actually godliness itself is your contentment. Who you have as Christ should be your contentment. So contentment is not limited, or it cannot be actually defined by what you have or what you don't really have, because you can have and still not be content.
Wow, yeah.
You know, the thing is interesting that you began with that question, because that question was written in the first book of the beginning, Genesis, right?
Right.
Now, so from the beginning, you see clearly what is it that God established the earth for? He says, two people. He told them, increase, multiply, right? So what will be the biggest problem when people start now increasing in numbers? Fight for space, right? Fight for relevance, fight for resources, right? So it goes to the heart of the designer. What God created us to is to everybody run on their own lane. Do your thing. Do the thing for which I've sent you here to do. Don't take from your brother, don't take from your sister. That's why when Israel got together as a nation, he gave them the 10 commandments. And that is becoming the guiding principle for us. Number 10 of it, he says in Exodus 20, it says verse 17, you must not want to take your neighbor's house. So it's not about me increase. If this is what God wants for me, it is for me to walk in that lane and do what God wants me to do. And these processes are gradual and staged in phases. So phase one, if I start desiring to drive a car at the age of 5, that's covetousness. I should be satisfied with working and doing what I'm supposed to do at that stage. Now, if it gets to a time where it is fitting for me to get a car and I can afford it, I get it. I'm not getting a car because Brother Andy has a car. Now, the reason why I go to the auto dealer is to get a transportation means, right? Now, if I show up there because my wife has mandated me that I must buy the same car that Sandrine sits in front and Andy drives this beautiful car, that we must have this kind of car, and I cannot afford it, and I buy it because I want to show Andy that we are up to him, then it's a hard thing. That's where it becomes covetousness. Now, if I start desiring his wife, you see, I'm not content with mine.
You know, I like the way you bringing me into perspective. So what I want to say is really beyond also looking at one's acquisition and a neighbor's acquisition or a neighbor's accomplishment. There's also even the very fact that we buy into the lie that we are defined by what we do. You know, it's very hard as men, right, to not to stay away from that, because, you know, obviously when men meet, right, in a group like this or in any kind of settings, we ask ourselves, oh, you know, my name is such and such. Okay, so what do you do in life? What is it that you are busy doing? So we are defined by the things we engage ourselves in and what we accomplish. So the first thing I'll say, I'll define myself by maybe my degree, you know, the expertise that I've acquired, or some title that I'm giving at my job. Now, that is what, as the men being task-oriented, we tend to gravitate towards. And that in and of itself also becomes an issue, because when that fades away, because we all know that, you know, let's say, for example, in these pandemics, so many millions of people have lost their job, or it just by the simple fact that life happens and you go through cycles. When that is taken away, who are you left to define yourself with, right? So that's why we are encouraged by the Apostle Paul to look beyond this life, because in this life, these things are temporary. And he says that godliness with content is a great gain because it has a benefit beyond this life. You are defined by more than what you stand to accomplish into this time frame. Though it is important, but please look at the things that makes the foundation of you that transcends the days that we spend here on earth. And of course, not looking at your your neighbor's beautiful car. We know that Apostle Keke like Mercedes, but that's a debate for another day.
That's great. That's a great addition. But our second question is also an interesting one, really interesting one, I thought, when I actually looked at it. So this person wants to know, what is the difference between contentment and just settling? It's an argument that's going on, like, I'm not going to go for, I want to just settle for what I can do. What do you have to say to such people?
Let me just, go back to the parable of the talent. Settling with what you have, right? It's the servant who did not do anything with what was given in the hand, and all he did was conserve that and not multiply, was called wicked.
And lazy.
Yes. Wicked and lazy. So that's the danger where, you are afforded with something that is given to you, and it is your responsibility to, if you look at just the natural process of life, right? Everything that comes in life grows. Mm. So nature speaks to us in terms of, when you look at agriculture, for example, is when a seed goes in the ground, it is watered and whatnot. Is natural destiny or its natural course is to grow, to increase, to add. Now, there is a difference between multiplication and addition, but at least addition has to happen. There has to be some type of growth. And as a matter of fact, let's say when you bring a child to a pediatrician and they are looking at the stats from last time the child was there, if there has not been any growth, there is a problem. So basically, life teaches us that if something does not increase, it dies. There is an issue. So one cannot settle. I'm not an advocate. I'm not, again, proponent of just saying, let's go out there and get anything we can get. But there is some wickedness and laziness and abnormalities into not growing. It's a sign that there's something that is not right. At least that's my perspective. I don't know how you holy men feel about that.
But I remember when we said that we're saying that contentment has nothing to do with possessions, right? It has nothing to do with how much one has possessed or whatever. So I think when it comes, again, we're talking about that state of what is in that person's heart, right? So settling can be, hey, somebody has worked hard all their life, and they have all, I guess, the resources and the means to, I guess, kind of take it a little bit easy in life, right? So I guess it depends on how you want to define the term settling. Settling can just be, the person just want to take it easy. That doesn't mean that they're not active. You can still be very valuable and contributing to society and your community at all stages. But maybe you're taking a more of a reserve seat back. Maybe you're not in that phase of accumulating and all of those type of things. So there could be a stage for that. And that person that is in that stage where they're saying, hey, you know what, I'm settling down. I'm kind of taking it easy. It could be, in my mind, defined as the person is content. They're content with what they've been able to work hard and achieve in life. And now they just want to take it a little bit easy. But I think if I truly understand the heart of the question, we're talking about somebody that is really settling in the sense that they've kind of given up, right? And if that is the case, then I think then that speaks to the heart of what Minister Andy was saying, is that now you're going against the cause of nature, right? Which is that, number one, we were amended here to what? To till the land, to work. There's an aspect of that. So once you get into where you just sitting back, laissez-faire, let whatever happen, and I think now you're going against a little bit of the natural order of how we should be engaging.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, Jesus said in John 6, my Father has never ceased from working. I do the work of him who sent me. Now, if your father, you see, again, we're talking about, you see, contentment is not something you find on Wall Street. We're talking about the kingdom. And so for those who are listening to us, this is not a concept that you can go and practice because it goes against the grain of our own individualistic and societal construct. Remember, the issue, the conversation we are having is within the context of a capitalistic society. So capitalism is not a kingdom principle, period. God's system has no label. It's called the kingdom of God. It's not socialist, it's not communist, it's not capitalistic, it's God's kingdom. Now, so within this capitalistic society, the man who stops trying is called lazy. In the kingdom, the man who stops trying is giving up on his God. Because if your God is still working and still having plans and purposes for you, and for those of us who believe in Jesus, who are members of the kingdom, if you're following Christ and Christ is telling you, do this and do that, and you say, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm okay where I am, you're in disobedience, you're in rebellion. Now, there is a place for the, I like Minister Anthony's word, the man is settled. He's come to that place where he feels he can relax, right? Or settle there because that is an instruction. And when he was saying that, David came to mind. David was very active. David was one man that was an overachiever in his generation. Many of us know he was not only king, he was not only commander-in-chief, he was governing the country, he was writing psalms, he was a musician. The man was multi-talented, right? A great apostle in his time. But he wanted to engage in one major project. He's done Zion. He says to God, I want to do a temple because this tabernacle of cloth, we got to change that. Man, I'm living in stone houses with gold and silver and all that. I want to get God a befitting building. And what did God tell him? Stop. Now, if David was not content with the fact that that temple is not going to be made by David, because you see, for us as men, sometimes we believe that we have to get it all done. Whatever we dream of that, we find it difficult to say, okay, maybe I have this idea, maybe it's for the next generation. Maybe I'm not the one. Maybe I'll prepare the people who will get there. Because there's always this go, 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 tax-oriented. And sometimes we find ourselves not being content where God has brought us to and told us to stop. We want to go beyond that. And that oftentimes brings destruction. Imagine if David began to fret and insist that I have to build that temple. He doesn't have the wisdom. God didn't give him the wisdom. When someone came, he did it with brilliance and with grace, which is what was meant for him. And that is actually goes to the heart of this conversation. That is not so much about what we do, like we've said, but the heart and attitude with which I approach our life. Am I satisfied where I am today with God and pressing forward with him to the next level?
I think you encapsulate everything in that last statement there. Being satisfied where you are in the moment, but yet being dissatisfied, knowing that there's a bigger purpose that you still are yet to accomplish in some instances.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, what I just want to add to what all the previous speakers have said is this. I believe that settling sometimes is an indication of lack of drive. Sometimes we come to a place where we feel we are settled because there is that lack of drive. And most of times too, people come to that point when they realize that the going has become tough. So they settle wherever they are. You can remember that when the children of Israel were out of bondage and were moving towards the promised land, they came to a point when things were becoming so difficult, they decided they wanted to go back to Egypt and settle. That was the settling mentality. I believe very well that when we talk about a blessed mind is a content mind. That's the way I see it. A blessed man is a content man. So if you want to see a man who is content, look at a blessed man. Bible says that we are blessed to be a blessing. Do you understand? When you come to the place of contentment, you don't stop. Your blessing has to flow out. That is when you are really content. That is when you exhibit your contentment in action. The Bible says that we should remember the Lord our God, for he gives us the power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant that he swore to our fathers as it is this day. So that means that God's purpose to give you everything is because there is a covenant to be established, and that covenant will cause you to not to settle down. If you have to give. That is when you have come to the place of contentment, until you get to a place where you can sit down and say that what I have is enough. So I have come to I can give. You are not content and you are not blessed. So to be able to know a person who is actually truly content is to look at the way the person deals with what he has. Because the issue, as we've all agreed, is not about what you have or the possessions that you have anyway. It is about your heart, and it's about how blessed you are, how content you are, how you are able to wallow in what you have with satisfaction. And Pastor Keke was talking about covetousness. The moment covetousness, or the ugly head of covetousness is lifted up, and you know that you are outside the area of contentment. So to cap it, or I believe that settling sometimes it's an aspect, or it's a portrayal of lack of drive. And the moment you come to the place of lack of drive, it's not that you are content, it's because you lack the wherewithal to move on. Being content does not necessarily mean that you should sit down, fold your arms, and not do anything. Go to the beginning. We should multiply. Multiplication is taking a seed and sowing. And that is why the Bible says that the people of this world, they are wiser in their generation than the children of light, because sometimes we children of God sometimes think that we can fold our hands and everything will just fall in. It doesn't work like that. Both in the kingdom of God and even in the kingdom of this world, the principle works the same until the grain that you have falls down and die, until you give, until you do. You cannot sit down without investing and expect that everything will go on well. But let me just end it this way. To come to the place of contentment, you must understand, especially in the context of poverty, riches, and whatever, we must come to a place where our money itself can go beyond our shores and begin to work for us.
Right. So let me throw this in there real quickly. So there are people that, we've had preachers preach, and we're saying that we should desire for more so we can be a blessing to others, and that's one of the things that Pastor Amma also just mentioned. There are some people who have gotten to the notion to think that, like we said, it's not good to have more. But there are other people who are also thinking that settling, for instance, or being content with the little that I have is selfishness, in the sense that you're just thinking of you. You're not thinking of kingdom. You're not thinking of God. You're not thinking of other people. I don't know what your thoughts are on that one, because, it makes you feel like I should get more so that I'll be able to bless someone or give someone, because if you don't have, then you can't give or you can't bless someone. So is it selfishness in a way?
I would disagree.
I think. Sorry, I think, let me quickly put this one in there. I think that you are dovetailing into selfishness if you think that you are content, because in the kingdom of God, you have to give your tithe. That is money right there. You got to pay you have to give your offering, you have to give alms, and you have to pay your first fruit. You cannot say you don't. If you don't have, how do you do all these things? They are financial responsibilities in the kingdom of God, so that you must have to be able to do all this. Though it's not about, you can't quantify it in terms of how much you give, but the principle of giving in all these dimensions is there. So if you want to sit down and fold your hands and not work, then you find it difficult to be able to meet all these financial obligations in the kingdom also.
No, but the challenge with the idea of giving is that when Jesus saw the offering bucket at the temple and made a comment, the person he recognized as having given most was the woman who gave all she had, a mite. Do you understand? Yeah. So I think the idea to settle is not about how much money you bring. It's your ability to fulfill God's purpose and plan for your life. Where you are, is that where God has stopped you? Is the question. If you see, for example, there are people who would have said, David, I think you should have built this temple I mean, you have the capacity. Look at how you've taken Israel from where he was to this level. This is something you should do. But David was saying, no, everybody bring your gift. I'm going to make my gift. It is the next for the next king to do.
You know,
that was a place of contentment. Now, you see, our God does exceedingly abundantly more than we ask or think. So it's not really that the preacher is trying to make people to get more. He says this grace, you know, in 2 Corinthians 9, it says that this grace will abound towards you, that you may have more, so that you can not only meet your needs, you'll be able to spend it on others. So it goes back to this idea of your success with God has eternal impact with other people. So you're not just folding up like, look, it's okay, it's for me, you know, I got my 1 cat, 2 dogs, and my little house, I'm okay. That's fine. But if that is where God wants you to stop, stop. But if that's not where you're supposed to stop, at the end, God is going to ask you, bro, why didn't you go the extra mile? I was waiting for you at mile 4, and you stopped at mile 2. And we were supposed to take you to mile 5. And because you didn't get to mile 5, there are so many people whose journeys were impacted, and they didn't get there. So for the Christian, it's more of how are you, it's your journey and your walk with God. Every phase, be content with it, no matter the circumstance. Knowing fully well you have somebody with you. You know, I like what Pastor Amoa said, people giving up, you know, maybe they no. But you see, it means that you're not listening to your cheerleader, because Jesus will not give up.
He never did.
He never did. That's not his character. You know, because if you think that everything you have to come up with is from within you, then you can give up. But if you believe the gospel that says that greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world, I can do all things through Christ, then there's no stopping you accomplishing God's purpose for your life. I'm not talking about being where Pastor Ebo is. Because if my race in life is to be where Ebo is, then that's covetousness. That's not contentment.
You know,
but I want to be where I am supposed to be. And that's why Paul said in Philippians 2, he says that I may lay hold of that. Philippians 3, that I may lay hold of that for which Christ laid hold of me. That's all he's saying. I want to be where Christ wants me to be.
You know, I believe in the scripture that says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children and his children's children. So, which is, I feel like, you know, it's a challenge for all of us to live a life onto this earth that for the amount of time that's allotted to you in a way that you should leave an impact for your children and the generation after. So clearly, it's something good to do. But, you know, we all know that the heart of the matter is the matter at heart. Basically, whatever you
Andy has said something else.
Heart of the matter is the matter at heart.
So, can I take that quote?
Yeah.
Oh, please give me credit when you say that. I know you know me. Yeah, I'm not as famous as you, but I'm content with where I am. If you give me credit. So as I was saying, is that really what drives your heart is really is what God is looking at. When you look at millionaires, like you can meet millionaires and billionaires who are the cheapest people you have never idea of. You know, they are, I won't mention specific names, but there are 2 tribes in my country. And one tribe is a tribe of folks that are very boastful, stubborn, and proud. And they are very generous, but they are generous in a way that speaks loud, where they would like for you to know that, hey, I came in town. So when I get in the room, you know, I'm solving problems. You know, oh, don't worry about it. You know, hey, please pay over there. Oh, you know what? I'll take care of that. No, don't worry. Please go ahead. So in such a way. But there is another tribe where we know them for being stingy, meaning that you meet a millionaire of theirs who is walking with a t-shirt with a hole in it and slippers, old slippers, but the guy is sitting on $1 million, and you see the house that he lives in, very modest. You know, he even put a cardboard as a curtain, but the guy under his pillow is sitting mattress. But so basically, the heart of a person, even in the Word of God, they say God likes a cheerful giver. Let's say you go somewhere and you know, you have all these means, but they say they're calling for an offering for a temple. You give, but you're like, I should have done. God is displeased with that. So you can be a millionaire giving to make your name great, which is not what do. Giving grudgingly, which God doesn't like. And even as a matter of fact, God tells you that even if you as a person have millions, but you give it all to the church and you don't take care of your family, He's displeased with that. So the achievement of money and in its capacity to take care of people can be a lure in terms of saying that, okay, now I feel that I have fulfilled my purpose in a sense. That's just the caveat that I just wanted to add. Like, check your heart.
Okay. So well, now that we're checking that, this question is really this. I looked at this, and in season, right? In the season we're in right now. Let's say for instance, let's talk about the system and the kingdom. You know, the capitalist world we're in right now. And there's a system that's taking care of people. Let's just say mostly maybe underprivileged people or people who are not doing well, whatever. You have the system making sure there's insurance being paid. You have a system that's making sure that there's SNAP benefits for people who want to do groceries, you know, with the EBT stuff. There's a system that gives you housing, Section 8, where, you know, you don't have to work too much. Don't make a big check. I'll just give you a house and put you somewhere with your kids. What do you have to say about that? Is that making people content, you know, in their own ways and small, and is it limiting us in a way? Is it affecting how we see kingdom? Because we feel like maybe, you know, the government is providing everything for us, and maybe the church is supposed to be doing the same thing for us. Does it limit the Christian in any way when we get, because with the unemployment benefits and stuff that are going on right now, people don't want to go to work. I'm being legit, you know. And that's good, you know, and all of that stuff. So system and kingdom, how do we maneuver this?
I think that we need to, as a people, or as a people, we have been disadvantaged historically. Do you understand the systemic disadvantages that have gone on over the years? We've come to a place whereby the society in which we live in recognize the systemic inequalities financially that has bedeviled the country. And we have come to the place that I'm not going to say that the government wants to make amends, but wants to ensure that people that have been disadvantaged over the centuries or over the decades will have an opportunity or have something that will bring them, at least bring the leveling or the playing field to kind of like an equilibrium. So they are trying to reset. So as a child of God, taking advantage of these situations, I think is a good thing. I know that some families think that, I know of the family that had a disabled child, and the mother didn't want to go for disability, saying that it's against her Christian principle. And the husband also said that we need to get this. It's something that the government has put together for us. And it was a big debate in that family.
I pay tax for it, they say, right?
Yes, I know. So in that situation, all our advice is that they have to come to a compromise. But there is nothing wrong for that family to enjoy the benefits of society. You know, we can talk about the way the system is structured and some of the things that does not work for us. Let's say the last tax overhaul that benefited the top tier financial people in society, when the tax cuts benefited the billionaires. Do you understand? They took advantage of it and they benefited from it. Now the system has been put in place where those who are, I wouldn't say below the poverty line, but those who need that financial help should be able to get it. SNAP, Link, Medicaid, Medicare, all these things have been put together so that those who naturally might not be able to make ends meet may have some help. So I believe very well that as Christians, we should not despise these things. If you don't want to take it, that is fine. But if you want to take it, I don't think there's any Christian principle that prevents you from doing so.
I think great points, Pastor Amo. And I think the bit that I can add to this particular line of inquiry is, the programs in itself are not bad. Like Pastor is saying, they're designed to help those that are, hurting in society. And that is we learned that, and that is throughout ages. It doesn't matter which system that man has tried to implement in order for us to organize ourselves. There's always going to be issues. There's no easy way to say we're going to spread everything equally, because we can't, right? Some people are willing to work, some are not. Some people are sick, some are young, some are older. So we're always at different levels in life. So you can't spread everything equally. So regardless of whatever system that you design, there's always going to be people that are struggling in certain areas, and no fault of their own sometimes. And that's what these programs are designed to do. In fact, if you really look at it, they are designed for the minimum. These are minimums, that are being put in these situations, that are being given in this situation. And there's always this mindset that, the government is only giving these programs to poor people and government. In fact, if you look at most of the programs that are designed by the government, they're not meant for low-income people. Most of the benefit, people forget.
Speak, brother.
Billions of dollars that was passed.
Yes.
If you look at how much is being allocated to these unemployment payment, and they are peanuts. The overall budget on the annual basis to service the SNAP program, for example, is peanuts.
Yeah.
Now think about it. The SNAP program, for example, is not even designed for poor people. You know that? The whole program of food stamp, it's not for poor people. It's for farmers.
That's right.
It ensures
It's
that
the biggest
the farmers,
welfare program for
yes,
farmers in America.
it's for farmers. It has nothing to do with you, the average Joe that thinks you're struggling and you're hungry, so the government wants to give you food. No. The whole idea behind it is that it ensures to the farmers that roughly maybe 40 or 50 billion dollars is coming from the federal government to buy your stuff, because it's part of the system. Otherwise, the food will go to waste. So the government is saying, hey, rather than the food going to waste, I'm going to directly buy that food and then give it out in the community. Why? Because it has an indirect and a direct benefit to all of us as a society. But let's not lose heart. That is small dollars compared to actually, if people actually studied the system more, they'll be more upset, because even in the pandemic, those that are well off, the programs have all been designed to what?
Benefit.
Bail them out first.
That's true.
And small dollars. And this is where most people miss it. The wealthy and the very well-to-do have been able to force the vast majority to fight over the small amount while they walk away with the billions. So they've been able to trick everybody to be upset that somebody is getting $300 a week. $300 a week. I don't even want to qualify for that. If you look at what it's needed to qualify for these programs, you realize that when you qualify, you're really already hurting, right? So as a child of God, why would you even want to be or wish to be in a situation where you qualify for these things? Because a lot of these things, to qualify you, that means you have to be living below the poverty line or right at the poverty line. Why would you want to be in that category? Now, if unfortunate situations happen and you happen to be in that situation, that's what these programs are there to give you an opportunity for you to start to work out of that situation. But it shouldn't be a state that you want to desire to be at all, because it is set up with the minimum mentality. So that is just a little bit that I wanted to add. And I'll say that if the program is there and you qualify for it, take advantage of it. I think the heart of it is where if you don't qualify and you're using mischievous ways to try to get those programs, that is where you need to check yourself.
Yes. Or whereby you become a burden to people around you. You know, because the solution has to come from somewhere, right? But I just wanted to say that, again, within our culture and society here in the United States, we run a government of the people, by the people, for the people, right? So this is us doing stuff for ourselves. And I like how my brother, Anthony, you know he's a businessman. He understands the economy, has put it. No, because that is the fallacy. Think about it. What made Bill Gates, all the billionaires we know, Elon Musk, are researches that government paid for through NIH. These vaccines that were being produced, guess who paid for it? The government paid for the research 35 years ago through many scholars and scientists that have been doing work in the university. The roads, the infrastructure that the government builds is to help wealth creation. And so, like Jesus, who is a great economist, by the way, Jesus is one of the best economists. You remember what he told his disciples when they were fretting over, should we have spent this money? Should this woman have broken this alabaster box? Shouldn't we have sold it and made some money and use it for the poor, right? Again, recognizing that the care of the poor is part of the responsibility of his people, the church. Jesus told them, look, bro, the poor will always be with you, which means every society has to make provision for the poor. And I want to tell the story of one of the great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmothers of Jesus. Her name was Ruth. She traveled, she was unfortunate in the sense that Naomi and her husband went to Moab looking for bread because there was famine in Egypt, in Israel. So they moved to Moab. They left Bethlehem and they went to Moab. Right there, the man suffered great misfortune. All his children died. He himself died. Left to the widows. So his wife, Ruth, and Naomi, and the daughter-in-law, Ruth, had to make the trip back to Israel. They came back poor, broken. How did they survive? A system that God has placed in the books. In Leviticus 19:10, God said to Israel, he says, when you harvest, when you cut your crops at harvest time, don't cut all the way to the corners of your field. And if grain falls on the ground, you must not gather up that grain. Don't pick up all the grapes in your vineyard or pick up the grapes that fall to the ground. You must leave these things for your poor people and for people who traveling through your country, meaning strangers. I'm the Lord your God.
Mm-hmm.
He says, don't live. There are some people who are going to have need, but that is not where they live. Again, what I love about the way my brother Anthony's answer, but he demystified the idea of getting help, because in our culture it's been stigmatized, making it look like a certain group of people. And straight up, it's people of African descent feel like their welfare, they are depending too much on the government. Frankly, if you're a single mother with 5 or 6 kids, do you want that woman to put all those children in daycare or leave them uncared for and go to work for minimum wage? Or do you pay her to stay home and be a mother and raise good citizens? That's the question for the society. But here Ruth and Naomi comes into the economy. They've not farmed, they've not done anything. How did they survive? They went to a brother, Boaz. And that's where Ruth started gleaning. But you know, she never ended up being a gleaner. She didn't end up being there. She used the system when it was needful for her to, unashamedly, and she was commended. In fact, Boaz said, don't go anywhere else, stay with my farm, because I want you to make sure, and instructed all his guys, workers and supervisors, said, when this woman comes, purposely leave things for her, because she's a near kinsman. So sometimes these aids that are coming is for a purpose. If you're in school and you need help, get the help. Whatever help, don't abuse the help, use the help. In fact, within the US economy now, I read a great story today about Stockton in California. The mayor instituted basic minimum income for a certain number of people in his community. He gave them $500 every month for 18 months. After 18 months, independent researchers came back. More people who received help became unemployed, reported less depression and anxiety. We are able to actually, they spent where they spent the money, only 1% of that money that was spent by those 150 people was spent on alcohol or tobacco. It was spent on rent, it spent on care for their family, housing, and things that provided for the family. Great story where everybody contributing. That is the whole idea of life in a holistic society, and for the church to pay attention, because the reason why the government gets involved in solving some of these societal problems is because we are woke.
Mm.
We should be the ones helping the widows and the poor. In the Bible, it's clear what we should be doing. That is our forte. That is part of our ministry, healing, and all those areas that uplift humanity because they are made in the image of God, and move them to a place where they fulfill their God-given mandate. Because the goal is to bring man, restore that dignity and glory that God has placed upon man, and not allow that. Look at Jesus said to that. Look at that woman. He says a child, he says a descendant of Abraham being bowed by disease. You see, that's how Jesus saw it. A woman of covenant, a child of God. How can she be suffering like that? And he unburdened her soul and unburdened her life.
Pastor Ebo, I've been observing since all my panelists have spoken, and I feel like I'm watching C-SPAN or CNN, and it's a debate on the floor of the Senate. Already, I see that Minister Anthony has a bipartisan approach. The argument that he was bringing, they were both left and right.
Yeah.
Pastor Ebo, it's funny. He has blue today, but I won't speak much more.
Tomorrow I'm red.
I know. So already I can classify my panelists into the respective parties that they support, and that alone is great insight for me today. But what I want to add is something that twofold. One is when we look at there's a danger to handouts in society, and that is that to discourage the productivity. For example, where I work, there are companies that we contract for certain services. So, for example, processing paperwork to book loans or making certain phone calls and whatnot. So, during when the first stimulus went out and it was enacted, and there was the $600 that was added to each unemployed, not over and above what they were receiving, they realized that people were struggling with coming back to work. People who were called to come working, but they would rather stay home because they were making more money staying at home because of that additional check than what they were actually making coming to work. I remember my wife was laid off, and they called her to come working, and she had received that first check. I was like, oh, I'm gonna sit comfortable for the next weeks or so. But being the woman she is, she likes to be busy, and they called her to work part-time, and she said, you know what, maybe I'd rather just be busy than working. Of course, she also saw that maybe the $600 check would not come forever. So it's best to get something that's going to be long-term. But really, there's a danger to just handing out and discourage the productivity of a man. The last thing I want to say is in the book of Jeremiah, the prophet was addressing the nation of Israel that had gone in captivity in Babylon. And he sent them a letter. He says, give the letter to the elders and speak to the community. And the letter is long, but I want to just read a snippet which speaks to the point I want to make. So he sends the letter. He says, the letter was sent to the hand of Elijah. Let me move that. Maybe he said, thus says the Lord of hosts, God of Israel, to all who were carried away captive, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem to Babylon. So they come in and they are in Babylon, and you can think that, okay, let's say it's an outside system, and Israel gets there, and there's a system in Babylon. So here's the instruction of the prophet to them, right? He says, build houses and dwell in them. Build houses and dwell in them. A whole preaching can be done just on there, but it just means that, okay, you find yourself somewhere, you cannot always look back to who you were. You have to settle where you are, and dwelling is really meaning that when I dwell somewhere, I'm part of the community. They see me active. Otherwise, they'll just say build houses and it's okay. But no, it's not enough to have a house somewhere. Dwelling is meaning you have to be an active participant in the living. But the last part is what I speak to. It says, plant garden and eat of their fruit. Basically, they find themselves in a new system, and it says, I want you to integrate the system, which might means for us today, oh, you know what? Here, it doesn't matter if you have money to go to school or not. You can go to the top schools and maybe get a student loans and be the best that you can. At the end of the day, you pay that back. Go to the best schools. And if you borrow money, for a while, that's what they provide. They say, you borrow, you make the best out of it, you get knowledge, and at the end of the day, you pay that back. Okay, that could be that. Or it could mean for some of us, okay, you don't have to wait to save for 30 years to buy a house after 30 years or whatnot. We want to give you the money now. Live in the house. It's okay. Okay, then maybe you go and
get a mortgage.
And get a mortgage. That's a good debt to have, student loan and a mortgage. But maybe you have to do it a certain smart way. But definitely there is a way of you being in a system and taking advantage of that, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. But there, in that sense, I think it's positive. Let's say you go to school, you get a house, and whatnot. But there's also the part that says plant garden and eat their fruit, which means that when you go somewhere, you shouldn't always be a burden to the society in which you find yourself in.
That's right.
I'm sure they were there. Some of them were slaves because they were carried away by arms, by force. So they could do manual work and labor work and being taken care of in the sense that they just give them food. Or maybe the system wasn't there in place. And if the system wasn't there in place, they say, okay, we want you to plant gardens and eat of their fruits. Meaning that don't always wait for a handout to come in your plate for you to eat. You have to be productive where you are. That's the nuggets that I wanted to give. And it doesn't mean that I'm the Republican, by the way. That's my disclaimer.
Okay, I want to react to.
You're the Jesus the Christian said. Economist.
Yes.
Pastor Andy, I just want to say something. I think that people that are low at the lower end of the economic ladder, when it comes to handout and stuff like that, I think they get criticized unduly, because I believe that people at the top also take advantage of the system, and they take advantage in proportionately, even greater. Do you understand? But when it comes to the handout, the small handouts that people get, it becomes an issue of debate. Just like the current debate about the minimum wage and stuff like that. I believe very well that if we're going to be very, very scrupulous in examining those at the top and those at the bottom, we will come to a point and realize that even those who are the billionaires, those who are the millionaires, they still take advantage of the loopholes in the system to get better. Do you understand? So I don't see anything wrong with those at the bottom also taking advantage of the loopholes that is offered onto them. If there's going to be criticism or there's going to be people being examined, then I think we've got to go through the whole spectrum of the economic ladder and actually watch. I believe very well that people at the bottom are being unduly seeing us taking advantage of the system, whereas the people at the top, they've been doing it, tax cuts going to them and stuff like that, and it looks like it's okay. And that is the main reason why there is so much stalemate even in our political spectrum, because there are some people that think that it's okay for those who are on top to get all the tax breaks and get all the benefits that society, and even if they don't get it, they'll find ways and search for the loopholes and use it, tax evasion and stuff. It's all there, and they take advantage of it, and the system does not actually bring them accountable. But when you look at the people at the bottom who are taking advantage of this, let's say extended unemployment benefit and stuff like that, there's so much scrutiny going on it. I think that it's too much lopsided scrutiny that we see in the system, and I think
men of God. Men of God, I like your response, and I'm just gonna say that I believe it's not the Democrat in you that's speaking, but the pastor. With the question that
equity,
somebody didn't know you,
equity does not.
It's the Democrat
I'm
argument.
talking about equity here.
Me knowing
I'm
you,
talking about equity.
Okay, it's the pastor in you who's talking about equity. That's
but you see, it's interesting that if you want to frame it in political terms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, Jesus in our time will be difficult to be. People will be difficult to sort him out.
Yes.
Because here he was with a tax collector in his house enjoying his meal. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew, Levi. He called him. Say, hey. He went to his house. He ate with the rich and he dwelt among the poor. He ran with the poor. He ate with the rich. He identified with the poor. And it's not about left or right. These are things that men construct, but what is right? Because if you look at every society, is doing right. Could you believe? I mean, who will set up a kingdom? And the rubric that Jesus will use to judge us is whether I was sick and you visited me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was in prison and you came to see me. That's what he says he's going to use. Mm-hmm. It's not going to use whether you have you own the entire Chase, the bank, or that you lending money to nations. Mm-hmm. But it's what you did with your life and your time. And so it's not so much as it's just we bicker about all this political wrangling, but the bottom line is that the poor in our midst is being used as the yardstick of checking how well we're doing. Mm-hmm. Because left to man, we will cater to our best animalistic instincts or individualistic or selfish instincts. But Jesus laid it all out. Look at the Bible is a book of governance. Every leader, that's why part of what I say to us, to the church, God is giving us the opportunity to raise the next generation of leaders that America needs and the world needs. And so when our children go into leadership with the Bible as their book of manuals, they will do better. They will do well. We don't need to lobby them. They know what God is telling them. Like, David did in his time. Solomon did in his time. He basically asked for wisdom. But it's going to take wisdom for Christians to navigate through this whole, and with respect to what the topic that we're talking about, if I rely on food stamp for a season because that was what was needful, and teach my children to live on it, that's wrong.
That's the problem.
That's the problem. But if it's means like the young man who was the mayor in Stockton, California, he said he remembered his mother and how poor they were as a single parent, and they relied on food stamp. And so he said, if we had enough money to spend, life would have been better. And so he felt for the people who were at the place where he was. And so that's how he conducted that pilot, and that I talked about.
Great submissions by all of you. It's great. I was talking to one of our members the other day, a homeowner, and she was saying the same sentiment. She was like, a lot of people won't be honest with you, but I will tell you, I've gotten a whole lot of benefits for the government just because I'm a homeowner. And I feel like a lot of people are not upfront with these things, and we make other people look, bad. But thank you all so much for your summer. Our time is almost gone, but I want to ask this final question. I'm going to throw it out in two folds so we can get it. If you can address some of the signs of discontentment so that, we can bring this to the light of people. Somebody might be doing something, going through something, and they don't even know the state of their mind or state of their heart. What are some of the signs that you can point at and say, this is a point of somebody, you're being discontent, if you can look at something else. So signs of discontentment, and then what can we do as Christians and believers to not get into this habit of not being content with our lives, and not just what we do, as we've all said, but who we are in what God has committed into our trust. What are some of the habits we can? Is it, thankfulness? Is it, not comparing ourselves? If you can address that in one shot for us in the next maybe 5 minutes so we can be out of here. So signs of discontentment and what a believer can do, any healthy habits or any healthy culture we can do to not get into discontentment. Any one of you can go first. It doesn't matter what order.
I'll just talk about three things here that are signs of you being discontent.
If you say three, the rest don't have some, but okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'll just go through quick. Talking about envy and jealousy. The moment you start being envious, you know that there is something wrong with your degree of contentment. Mm-hmm. The spirit of comparison, trying to be like the other person, and finally, the insatiable desire for materialistic things. Just these three things, so that others will say something.
We hash them again for us. Rehash them again.
I'm talking about first, envy and jealousy. Mm-hmm. When you are envious of the other person. Secondly, the spirit of comparison, comparing yourself to the other person and trying to be like him, and the insatiable desire for materialistic things. You want this tomorrow, you want that, you want this.
Okay.
And interestingly, the last point you made is what the Bible warns against, that people, that the love of money is the root of evil, say that men desire this, hence they have run into all kinds of trouble. Yes. And so the other part is being content with who you are. You see, that goes to identity. If I'm content that in whom God made me to be, which part of the world he has me in, right? And knowing fully well that I'm his, because my identity being tied to him, not tied to my ethnicity. Remember recently, I was sharing with a group of believers. I said, don't call me black, because I am not black. That's not my identity. I'm a child of God. And he raised me among the Igbo people of the world. Now I reside in the United States as a citizen. That's where I am locally now. I don't know where my children and my children's children will be. But bottom line is that when I deal with my life, it's between what God has made me to be and what he wants me to do. And my capacity and ability is dependent on him, not so much about people around me or other things. So when we begin to doubt who we are, then we are really, because that's why he says, these things the heathens worry about. So be anxious. Don't be anxious about what you eat, what you drink, and what you wear. He said, these are the things that the heathens worry about. You see, those who are not in relationship with me, this is their priority. Just go after me, pursue righteousness, put me first, and all these things will come together for you. So once anxiety and worry becomes part of your life, and you begin to be discontent, begin to show disregard, maybe I'm not there because of who I am, who they call it. No, forget that. It is you and your God, your identity.
If I may add, I want to add two things. I know we pressed for time, but I will start by an example. One day, my uncle, who's a pastor, talked about this example. He was driving with his children. And they have a Mercedes. They have a Mercedes, just maybe like the one that Apostle Keke had at one point, but that's not the point. But they were driving a Mercedes, and they saw a small, it was a Toyota Tercel. So it was just to tell you the time in which we find this example. It was a couple of years ago. So he found that, and the children were like, "Daddy, we're driving behind this car, and you are not, basically we are behind." And to please them, he just speed up a little bit, and he passed them. He passed them, and the children were so happy. Yes, that is the best. So he used that as an example for the lure of comparison. So here you are, you're driving a Mercedes, and you overtook a Toyota Tercel who was driving at 40 miles an hour. Meanwhile, you're driving a machine that the manufacturer tells you that, please, we want you to test that vehicle about 120, 130 miles. We want to see how we handle this curve. So you drove at 50 miles an hour. You overtook a vehicle that was driving at 30 miles an hour. Meanwhile, the manufacturer expects you to test the limit of the machine when you are at 120. So the point of comparison that you made there, seeing that you were successful, was really not the case. So that's the lure of comparison, where you're seeing somebody and you're comparing yourself to the lane and where the person is, what the person is achieving. Meanwhile, maybe you might be called for doing things that you have no idea you can. So that's the first thing I want to say. The next is the one example that Minister Anthony gave us the last time, where he was saying that, there's a perception that when you look at somebody who has something that you have not, that he took something away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not the Father's mentality. Mm-hmm. We have, and I know Pastor Joel Osteen spoke to that as well. He said, you have to get into the abundance mentality, in the sense that what a person has and what you can have, you don't take away from each other. Like, for example, Elon Musk became now he is cruising into the Forbes richest man just because of the valuation of the stock that he has into the ownership of the company. But that did not take away from all the billions that Bill Gates or Warren Buffett have. Mm-hmm. You are somewhere at work, and it's very tricky. You are envying somebody who maybe might be promoted. You feel like, okay, maybe that's your place that they took. But is it that they took all the ideas in the world of the things that you can implement at work? Or can God still drop things into you that can distinguish you? So those are the 2 points that I want to address. And finally, it's just saying sometimes it's as easy as looking at somebody's face. If you are not joyful, you are not content.
Merci bien.
The little bit that I can share, I think so much has already been discussed and shared so far. And I'll use one simple example. It's actually a little story about two farmers. And the other farmer used to always come to the other neighboring farmer and say, wow, God has really blessed you. Look how beautiful your land is. The trees are glowing, your animals, everything is so blessed, and your land is so well tilled and everything. So every time this farmer will come to the neighbor farmer and just keep saying the same thing, look how much God has blessed you. And the gentleman finally went back to the farmer finally told him, yes, God has blessed me with a beautiful land, but you should have seen the land when only God had it. And the point was, regardless of what God blessed him with, he had to work. He still had to work to be able to bring everything into the manifestation, into the beauty that it exudes. So as an individual, I believe that all of us come into this world with a purpose, with a mission, with a gift to society. And it's really up to us, along this journey to be able to identify that, to be a blessing to mankind. And I think as long as you've been able to tap into that, and I think that's really the big question for all of us as we journey through this life. What is that purpose? Because once you can tap into that purpose, and if that is what you're working towards, and you're not comparing or looking towards what somebody else is doing, then you are literally now operating in that whole godliness with contentment, you know, because now you are operating in what you're supposed to be operating in. But I think anytime where you find yourself unsure, where you're now looking at what somebody else has done as a measuring stick, or what Pastor Andy just reminded us again about, where we're comparing or thinking that you gaining or somebody's gain takes away from somebody else, that is when I think now you're in that slippery slope. But as long as you can find a way to define or find your godly purpose on earth, and I think that's really the challenge for all of us. If we can identify that and pursue that, you know, with the zeal that we need to, then we're fine. We're working under the right guidance.
Wow, that's amazing from all of you guys. It's powerful to hear all of these amazing inputs, and guess what? Everything you just heard is for free. You know, that's the exciting part. That's the exciting part. So we're just happy to be part of what God is doing in our lives in this dispensation. Here at Christ Oasis Ministries, we believe that we're in the season of godliness. It's not ending when another season comes. It's just beginning of a season where we're just going to continue to grow in godliness. And we have wholeheartedly wrapped up the discussion of godliness with contentment. And this was part 2 because we couldn't finish the first one. Hopefully this was exhaustive enough. We're looking forward to coming to you again with great content. The other ministries that are doing amazing as well. So just follow this ministry if this is your first time you're watching us. Christ Oasis Ministries, Chicago, South Campus, North Campus, Bolingbrook, or anywhere of the world. You can follow us. The Voice of the Remnant by our senior pastor is always going on as well. Mondays, Wednesdays with Friday prayer meetings as well. Powerful sessions. You want to tune in and join and be blessed by these sessions. So we don't have much to say now. Thank you for your time. We try to keep it in an hour, but we went a little bit over. Forgive us. It was getting exciting. So we know we were a blessing today. The weather's nice also today. So step out there and have fun. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And from all of us from Christ Oasis, we're saying it's good night. Goodbye for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye,
Goodbye.
everybody.
Bonsoir, world.
All right.